All right, friends, welcome to the Blessed Family. I'm your host, Jared Dodd. So glad you're joining us this beautiful, warm, sunny Texas afternoon. Well, I guess it's still morning, isn't it? It's pretty dusty. At first, when you first hear about sand coming over from the Sahara, you think people are pulling your leg. But it's true. It's incredible. It's insane, and just reminds us that we're on a planet where lots of things are possible. And friends, think about all that's going on around this world. Think about all of the lives, all of the people coming into the land of the living today, and all the people exiting the land of the living today, and all of these lives, all of these relationships, and it's God's sovereign tapestry that is so far, as the Scripture says, His ways above ours. And yet you are a part of it. And God is, I'm just assuming, since you're on the show, that God is calling you to follow Him and to be and to focus on things like family. I was thinking earlier today about Christians taking dominion for Christ, which is what we're supposed to be about, and thinking about the different institutions and the different categories that need the light of Christ. And it's every category. It's every institution. Jesus is Lord of the heavens and the earth and all that is in them. And, so we need the gospel and the light of Christ to go into the arts, into science, into business, into economics, and into institutions like the state, and into, of course, the church. That's a given. But friends, in this show, our focus is on family, which I think you could argue is the most important one. I mean, it's definitely the most foundational. Some people are going to be touched by the arts more than others. Some people are going to be influenced by, obviously government's a big deal. But friends, think about it. Family is the one thing that people can't escape from. To be born into this world, there doesn't have to be economics. There doesn't have to be music, but there does have to be family. And that's where it is the Genesis 1 creation. So our hope and prayer, our conviction is that one of the big issues in this world today, and focusing down on our nation and the decline of Christian, of Western Christendom, is the breakdown of the family. And yet we are extremely optimistic because God is sovereign, and we believe that it's time for the Church of Christ to take dominion. It's time for us to, through love, through the gospel, through to lawfully take dominion, to lawfully bring all things into alignment with God and His Word, because His Word, and this is the doctrine of this all-sufficient nature of Scripture, His Word addresses all things, and therefore, why? Because it's His will that all things are aligned with Him. Well, today, speaking of family and speaking of God's will and speaking of taking dominion, we're going to be focusing on parenting, even though this definitely does apply also with marriage. But the topic today is finding quality time when life gets busy. Finding quality time when life gets busy. And there's no doubt that life can get busy. And there's no doubt that, we are supposed to be about our Father's business. There's things we're supposed to be about. And it's supposed to be busy. And there's just, sometimes I used to accuse God that He didn't give us enough hours in the day, enough days in the week, and yet I've obviously repented of that. That's nonsense. He's given us the perfect amount of hours and days and weeks, and yet the issue is being involved in the things that matter. So before I get practical into how to find quality time when life gets busy, I just want to give a disclaimer. This is not at all to give license to being too busy. You can be too busy. You can be busy in things that God doesn't want you to be busy in, and that's on you. So I'm not at all saying, hey, be busy where you shouldn't be, and I'm going to tell you how to somehow make it work and straddle the fence between the world and God's kingdom. No, that's not the teaching at all. The whole idea, for instance, just to give some things that I think will help you understand what I'm saying, I'm not at all advocating for the dad who's, working a job, which is very good, but then after work goes to, the golf league. And people say, Jared, you're being legalistic. Well, maybe. Obviously, there is a chance you could be involved in some kind of golf league and it be completely in God's will. But I'm just saying this, man, God has entrusted you souls. And this is speaking directly to dads. The chief soul is that of your wife, and then after that comes your children. And to put those off, to sacrifice those souls on the altar of entertainment or leisure activity, I mean, we have to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater on this, but that's just an example. Or, this could be the mom who, we may have to use internet. If you're listening to this podcast, you're most likely using internet. And yet, so there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but you can sacrifice relationships on the altar of those things. So this would be the mom who is online way too much, has a serious addiction there, whether it's social media or just surfing the web or blogging or whatever it is, and she's putting her family on the back burner. Well, we want to be wise about these things. But yet, even when we're doing things right or better, life can still be very busy. So this is about finding quality time. Now, like I said, this definitely can apply with the spouse, and spouses are more important than children. We need to get that order correct. And yet I felt led to focus on children. So, okay, here we go. And Susan, if you're listening, you're quite welcome for helping out with your house yesterday. That was a blast. Okay. So first of all, friends, children spell love. This is how children spell love. It's not L-O-V-E, it's T-I-M-E. That's how they spell love. It's time. And so we need to spend time with our children, and yet there's times when we can't spend as much time as we'd like, especially with men that are working. I mean, working and providing for your family is very godly. That's a big deal. That's part of what it means to be a man. Now, should you be wise in that? I would challenge a dad, if he's working 12 hours a day, and he can maybe adjust his spending and lifestyle and work 40 hours a week and spend more time with kids, I would say, move down, get rid of all the toys in the mansion because the kids and the wife are more important. But dads are going to work. Moms have responsibility. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts and pieces. So here's some tips. Most of these will apply directly to dads, but they definitely can also apply to moms. First tip, connect first thing in the morning with your kids. Connect first thing in the morning. So, dad, you're about to be heading out the door. Let's say you leave at 8. You leave at 7. Now, some of you leave too early where this just won't work. But if there's any way you can have a small window of time with your children first thing in the morning, I would encourage you to take advantage of it. This might be doing a devotional with the family. Going through a chapter of Proverbs or even a few verses, or picking up in the Gospels where you left off, or reading through the Action Bible, or if your kids are younger, a picture Bible. Or this might be going for a walk with your children in the morning. This might be reading Aesop's Fables, or whatever it is. This might be circling around and holding hands and praying together as a family. This might be just sitting around the table every morning, having breakfast together as a family, and really engaging with your kids, not just looking at your phone or the newspaper while they're looking at their devices. Shoot those things, turn them off. Sit down, have breakfast, look at each other, laugh, ask questions, talk about the day, set goals for the day. Say, okay, kids, this is what Dad's got going today. What are your goals today? And, be a team. Huddle up, right? So first thing is to connect first thing in the morning. And dads, moms, if you have an opportunity to do that, you need to take advantage of it. I mean, okay, let me just say this. Many children in this nation don't get 20 minutes of real connection with their parents in a day. Think about that. Everyone's gone first thing in the morning. They come back and they're plugged into the matrix of devices. I mean, the houses have been reduced to bed and breakfasts. I mean, we've lost the power of relationship. I think you can argue now more than any time in the history of the world, this generation has it the worst. Well, do something about that. Connect with your kids. Of course, I'm a huge advocate. I think we spoke about this last week, but I'm a huge advocate for homeschooling. Get your kids home. Mom, you don't have enough time with your kids? Get them home. There's a documentary in theaters tonight, this very evening, It's showing in Austin at 7 o'clock. If you're local here, it's called The Homeschool Awakening by Kirk Cameron. Check it out. Texas, by the way, to our Texas listeners, Texas happens to be arguably the freest state in the union for homeschooling. Go online and look up Texas Homeschool Coalition. Connect with them. They are awesome. Become a member, and they will have coaches who are 24/7. Anything you need, they have your back. There's really no excuse. So maybe you need to unplug your kids from some things to have that time with them, but connect first thing in the morning. Second tip, take your kids with you. Mom, Dad, you have errands to run? Take them with you. Right now, I had some errands to run, including this radio show / podcast, and Ruby Jane is sitting about 8 feet from me reading a book we just picked up for free. It was on the take for free shelf at the library. What is it, babe? Adventures of... I can't read it from here. I think it's the adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. And we're spending time together. I could have said, I just need some alone time, but I said, hey, I have things to do. I want one of my kids at least to be with me. So take them with you. Take them with you when you run errands. Take them with you when you go to work if you can. This is where, I have many childhood memories that are very precious to me. Both of my parents were very busy. They were full-time teachers and coaches in middle school and high school up until I was about 13 years old. That was their full-time gig for the first 13 years of my life. Grew up in Spring, Texas, there north of Houston by the Woodlands. And I have many memories of being at school with them, being in the dugout, being in the bleachers, being in the locker room, being in the office, just always being with them. And it was precious. They brought me with them. So as often as you can, get your kids with you. You have stuff to do. You have work to do in the backyard. Hey, come on, let's hang out. Spend time with them. Bring them with you. You're walking for exercise. Take them with you. It would have to be a very, very specific instance for you not to be able to bring your kids with you. Obviously, depending on your work situation, you can't bring your kids with you. But also errands. Just things you do that take you around town. Or, hey, let's say that you have a trip. I have friends that are in the cattle business, and they'll drive, 10 hours in a day. Bring your kids with you. Get a great audiobook. I'm doing a conference in a couple weeks in Minnesota. I'm taking five of my kids with me. It's a 32-hour round trip. And we're excited because we're going to have fun. We're going to listen to audiobooks. We're going to talk. We're going to explore. Bring them with you. Okay, third tip, lunch break. This would be specifically for moms and dads who are working. And, I'm thinking of dads who are working. Mom and kids are at home and they want to see dad, and dad has a lunch break. My brother-in-law, Aaron, for a time he worked at hotels. And I can remember going to see his family, and at lunch they would go hang out with dad. So mom and the kids would go on dad's lunch break, and they would spend time with dad. We had a sheriff in our local community here. He's no longer around, but he had, I think, 9 kids. And I would often see him coming in for his lunch break, and they would hang out at the playground. They would have lunch together with dad. Because friends, this is not convenient. It's not easy. But people do it when they realize that time matters. Quality time with children matters. And we live in a culture today who, if we don't proactively think, if we don't proactively fight against it, we have a culture today that sets us up for making every excuse not to spend time with our kids. And so you have to fight against that. Friends, you can today have your kids gone before the sun comes up and not have them back until the sun goes down. And I just want to encourage you, that might not be the best idea. Spend time with them. But if you have to be gone, find ways to connect with them. It keeps those heartstrings. Hey, here's something really cool about kids. God brings them into the world with their hearts automatically attached with mom and dad. And yet, guess what? If you neglect that relationship, those heart ties can be severed. And that's a big deal. I have the benefit of speaking to men and women who are at the end of their life, and all they care about really is these relationships with spouse and children, especially children. Usually they have a good relationship with spouse, but they wish they could go back. And friends, we only get one life. I mean, this isn't a rough draft, it's the final copy. And so you read Proverbs 26 for instance, where it says, my son, give me your heart and let your eyes observe my ways. And that's where they come into the world having your heart and you having theirs, but you've got to keep it. And you keep it through good quality time. Not just time in the same room, not just being geographically in the same area, but engaging with each other. So we've talked about connecting first thing in the morning, taking kids with you, errands and work. We talked about lunch break. Now let's talk about dinner. I mean, this is why the meal table is so huge. And I think it was episode 33 on our podcast. We talked about the power of the meal table. So if you're interested in that, you can go back and check it out. But God ordained us to eat. I mean, he fashioned us, created us to where we need food. And isn't it interesting that it's just in our nature, it's just a given, although maybe it's not so much anymore with our current culture, but we're supposed to eat together. I mean, think about if you visited a family and they didn't have meals. They just always came and got food when they wanted and went back in their separate living quarters called the bedroom, and they each have their own room. Even moms and dad, husband's wife have their own room in this scenario, and they just always eat alone. You'd say, well, that's weird. You're supposed to eat together. Why? Because there's something special about it. As you share in physical sustenance, it sets you up. It's a type and shadow for sharing in spiritual nourishment as well. So dinner's huge. Dads, if you're gone all day, but you can come home and have dinner with your family, this is your time. And I just want to challenge you because this is an old stat. I'm sure it's worse now, but 10 years ago, 67% of American families had dinner around the television set instead of around the dinner table. Turn off the devices, get rid of the distractions, sit down. The kids are putting food in their mouths, and Dad, you get to talk to them or read to them or, teach them, encourage them, challenge them, train them. You have a captive audience. They're all there. Everything's stopped. Mom has made this amazing, delicious meal, and you get to enjoy it and praise her for that, and you get to have this time where you have this audience with your children. Now, as you know, our culture is doing everything to break down and disqualify mealtime. Friends, one of Satan's strategies is to have you so busy with things that are quote-unquote good that you don't have time for the things that are essential and wonderful. So you're running around in 20 different directions, and you don't have time to even eat dinner together. Let me just challenge you. In my opinion, that's a symptom. If you don't have time to eat together, that's a symptom that you're busy doing too many things, even though they might be good, and you need to sacrifice those things for what matters. You need to fight for the meal table. Fight for that time. It's very precious. In the Psalms, when it describes the blessed man, it describes him in the context of the meal table. The wife is the fruitful vine, and the children are olive shoots around the table. It's a picture of a man sitting there with his family around the table. The Last Supper, Jesus gave us the terms of the new covenant around the table. What is it? Revelations 3:20 or 21. The metaphor or the picture that God gives of communion with us is that, it says, here I stand at the door and knock. If you come in, I will come and eat and sup with you. That's speaking of a meal table, so it's very precious. So take advantage of dinner. Read books. After you eat, clear off the table and play games. There was this, just this beautiful family. I haven't seen them in years. Love them and miss them. They are the Benarskis, and they're up in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. Had the joy of pastoring their family for about 10 years and seeing their 3 boys grow into manhood. And they had a family game night once a week. And it's funny looking back because, now that seems kind of normal. But at the time I was like, wow, people don't do that. And they should. So they they took advantage. And Mark, the dad, he worked hard and he worked long. But he came home tired and excited to spend time with his kids. So, okay, a couple more here. Number 5, be intentional. This means you're like, okay, hey, you know what? We have some minutes here. Hey, let's all, unplug from the matrices, turn off your phones. Let's spend time together. Last night, so Eden, my daughter's 2 months old, and the way that, here's some practical tips for, having babies and sleep training them. Because I can fall asleep at the drop of a hat and my wife, not so much, we have an arrangement when we have babies this age where she's back in the bedroom and I'm sleeping with the child in a bassinet in the living area or in our library. And, when the baby wakes up, I take the baby to mom and then I go back and pass out. And when she's done feeding, she brings the baby back because if the baby hiccups, it wakes her up. And so, and that's pretty typical usually with men and women, but she was a really good sleeper until we started having kids. Anyhow, last night my son Jedediah is like, Dad, can I sleep out here with you and help you with baby? And he actually, sweetheart, he actually wanted to do it so mom and I could sleep in the same room and he would take care of baby. He's 11 years old. And I said, yeah, absolutely, but I'm going to stay out here with you. And we had the lights off waiting for mom to bring baby back. It was about 10 o'clock last night. And I told Jared and Isaiah, the rest of the kids were in bed. I said, hey, well, Ivy was back doing some of her fun hobbies. But I said, hey, boys, and all the lights were off. I said, hey, come in here and let's sit down and let's talk. And we hung out for probably 45 minutes in the dark, just talking and visiting, asking questions, talking about our passions, talking about God. And it was beautiful and it was awesome. And so there's something about being intentional. There's something about seeing, okay, here is a window of opportunity. Everyone, or you 3 or you 2 or whoever it is, we're going to take advantage of this. So be intentional of that quality time. And lastly, got to wrap up here. We're at our times, and be spontaneous. Man, there's something about saying, everyone's doing their stuff, but it's a Saturday. Everyone's running around. You're like, hey, everyone, we're going to the lake. Or, hey, we're going to get ice cream. Or we're going out for dinner. Or we're going to go for a hike. Something that people will be excited about, and every family has their different things like that. And it's spontaneous and it's fun. And the next thing you know, you're spending quality time together. So, friends, the point is, life can get busy. Now, your life might be too busy. You don't have an excuse. You need to make sure you're about the Father's business, whatever that is for you, and that you're not falling prey. And let's just, I'm just going to graciously throw all of us under the bus. It's very likely that we are engaged in things that we shouldn't be. Not because they're bad, but because they are time wasters, and there's things that are essential that are being put on the back burner, such as the meal table, quality time, devotional time with our family. And so we need to be wise about that. But yet, life is still going to be busy. Be strategic. And I especially want to challenge the dads. Be strategic. Connect with your children. Connect with your wife also, man. Spontaneous date nights, planned date nights. And, well, that's a whole nother talk. Friends, we have this window with our children. They're always going to be our children, but they're only going to be in our home for a certain time. Take advantage of that. These are the years where we shape them into the people they're going to be for the rest of their lives. And that requires time. Good quality time. All right, friends, blessings to you. Hey, guess what? I don't care what's happened, your shortcomings, there's nothing lost that cannot be redeemed by the grace of God. So don't quit. You've fallen down, get up, dust yourself off, put your hands to the plow, and never look back. Friends, we love you very much. Reach out to us anytime at dodclan7@gmail.com. Blessings to you and your family. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.